Jessie, welcome to the podcast. It's really great to connect again.
Yes, it really is. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm really, really happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to speak. I mean, we're going to be talking about a favorite topic of mine, and obviously a favorite topic of yours,
Yeah.
which is breathwork ultimately, and in particular, I guess, transformational breath. But before we dive into this, would you like just to share with our listeners a little bit about you and who you are and what got you into breathwork?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. Thank you. Um, my background is actually in the corporate world, working in HR and recruitment, and I did that for 12, nearly 15 years over in Australia and the UK, working for law firms in the legal industry and the financial services. And about 5 years ago, it got to the point where I wasn't managing the stresses of my job very well. And I was starting to feel the overwhelm and the impact of that. So I wasn't taking care of myself. And I don't think I had the tools at my disposal to manage the stress that I was under. So I was making quite unhealthy choices, or almost in survival mode, trying to get through the days because I was so busy. But I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating well, I wasn't taking care of myself, and it just got too much. I was so close to burnout that I decided to leave, take some time out, and figure out what I wanted to do. So I decided to move to Brazil, as you do, and started to take some time to really think about what it is that, is important to me. And I love working with people and came to the conclusion that I want to work as a coach. So trained as a health coach. And during this time, I connected with someone who had just certified as a transformational breath facilitator. And they were talking to me about breathing. Come along to my breathing class. It was actually the first one that they were going to run. I was like, breathing? What do you mean? I was like, okay, I'm open to this. Let me come along and let's explore it. And I went along to this class. And it was really, really powerful for me in the sense that I was able to connect with this and connect with myself in a way that I hadn't in such a long time. Just from breathing, I found a certain stillness and a certain peace that I hadn't been able to find for a long time. It's almost like it was calling me back into myself rather than looking outside for all these things I've been looking for. This was almost calling me back in. So I was like, oh, that was cool. So I actually missed the first half of the session, so I didn't hear any of the introduction or anything like that. I turned up late because of other reasons and went straight into the breath work. So I was like, I want to know more about this. So carried on going to classes, really enjoyed it, and found the more I was doing it, the more things I was experiencing. So I was starting to open up, release things I've been holding on to. Emotions were coming to the surface. I was connecting more with myself. I was learning how to meditate and just slow down my life and be really present. So the training was being organized in Brazil, and I went along just out of curiosity. I was like, I want to know more about this. Like, I want to know, it sparked my curiosity. I'm connecting with this. And during the first week of training, it's called a personal seminar. Now, you're familiar with this as well, Alex. So a personal seminar, it takes you on a journey, and a personal journey, where you're doing 2 full breathing sessions a day, other modalities alongside that. And during this week, I had some incredible breakthroughs. So here I was exploring this breath work, thinking, oh, this is really helping me to feel more calm and grounded and peaceful. And then all of a sudden, like just after halfway through the training, wow, I had this huge breakthrough where after one of my breathing sessions, or during one of my breathing sessions, I've released an incredible amount of trauma that I'd been holding in my body from when I was a teenager. So I'd lost my dad in a fire when I was 16. And so, as you can imagine, life-changing moment, then spent years after that dealing with it, having counseling, therapies. I ended up studying psychology, I think, looking for answers unconsciously. And so in my conscious mind, I dealt with all of this. Okay, this has happened. This is a part of my life and who I am. In my head, fine. But what I hadn't realized is I'd stored it away in my body and disconnected from it. So through this breath work, I talk about connecting with myself, that had allowed me to bring that to the surface and release what I've been holding on to. So I was carrying around this guilt, survivor's guilt, for like not saving my father in this fire, which is obviously not my fault, but in my unconscious, I'd stored this away so deep, I didn't realize it was there. And it was actually impacting my life and decisions I've been making without me knowing. So after this huge release, I was like, what just happened? I was like, what just happened? I did not even know that was there. So almost instantly, I had this wave come over me of just peace and connection to self and who I am. And I just thought, wow, this is incredible. Like, this work, I have to share it. So it was at that point I was like, okay, I'm going to share this with people because it's so powerful. Because I had no intention to be a breathwork teacher before this, but then I was like, this has changed something huge for me. And my first intention is to share it with my family and my loved ones, because they're the first ones I thought of. But then obviously, you know, anyone and everyone that wants to learn about this, it's really helped support me and change my life. So off I went to continue my training in Brazil and Mexico and the US, in the UK, all over. It's amazing that it's available all over the world. And it continues to teach me, it continues to help me grow, and it continues to allow me to support others. So that has led me all the way back here to London to be able to, speak to you about this now.
Okay, that's brilliant, Jessie. And I love the fact that you did the training in so many different countries. That, I mean, that must have been quite special in its own right, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that being in Brazil at the time, I was, you know, fully immersed in the Brazilian culture and starting to open up and experience different things. So to be able to have access to different teachers and people and culture whilst I was doing that, and then travel to other countries and experience it in different places, it really, I mean, the training itself was essentially the same. It's the same training, but, you know, working with different teachers and different cultures, I think it added something for me. And that's what I, you know, valued as part of my journey. So it's amazing that it's all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's a really good point, because that's got me sort of reflecting that my level 4A is likely to be with the same sort of head teacher, so to speak, which I love. But at the same time, there's obviously that there is now a part of me which thinks, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to just have that completely different experience with a different sort of head facilitator. But yeah, there are pros and cons, I guess, to all of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's the same with absolutely anything, that, you know, it's whatever you're drawn to and whatever connects with you, because essentially all of us breath workers out there are doing the same thing. We're teaching you about your breath. And, you know, if you're trained in a particular modality, for example, transformational breath, we're all trained in the same practice. We've had the same teachings, but, you know, we're working with different energies. You're bringing your own energy to the table and learning from different people in different ways. So I would always say, go with who you're drawn to work with, because you're going to learn something from absolutely everybody anyway.
Right.
But it's, you know, what connects for you and what feels good. And then, you know, even after you've done your training, there's all these people that you can work with after that. It's not that once you've done your training, that's it. You know, you can continue to work with these people and learn from them afterwards. So yeah, it's
Brilliant.
wonderful.
So there might be people listening who, like you when you were speaking to your friend, are going, what on earth are they talking about with transformational breath? So do you want to kind of introduce transformational breath, and I guess from a high level general perspective, what are some of the benefits or reasons that we might consider coming and seeing someone like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So what is transformational breath? You know, why is it important for us to breathe? So breathing it's, you know, it's our life force. We don't breathe, we don't survive. But one thing we may not be aware of is how well we're breathing. So how much attention do we actually give to our breath, and how well are we breathing? So if we actually pause to pay attention, we may notice that we might not be breathing very deep, or we're breathing quite fast, or, you know, shallow, or we might start to notice some tension in the body and different things that we're holding on to. And what transformational breath is, it's basically a self-healing technique. It's a conscious, connected breathing practice that allows you to open up your breathing pattern and restore it to its most natural form. So when I say that, what I mean is, you know, most of us will use about a third of our whole respiratory system. So our whole capacity, we're using about a third, not even half. So the transformational breath technique will make you aware of this and allow you to start to open that up, to use as much of that as possible and restore us to our most natural breathing pattern. What I mean by that is, if you think about how we should be breathing, I like to say to think about babies or even animals, if you've got pets or anything, and think about how they breathe. And, you know, if you're observing them, then the whole respiratory system opens up, like this big Buddha belly, in and out, and the chest is opening, like the whole breathing frame is opening and releasing like a wave of breath. But then as we get older, we might learn to control our breath, and life happens and things happen. We can talk about that more, but our breathing pattern becomes more restricted. So this is what transformational breath will help us to release. If we notice that our restrictions and tightness in our breath, to open it up and breathe to our fullest potential, which in turn will really impact your life and how you live your life. But also it works on 3 different levels. First, on the physical level, opening up the breath like I described. Also on the mental and emotional level. So as I mentioned during my training, I had a big emotional release. It can help to release tension and stress and trauma that we've stored in the body. And then the next level it works on is the spiritual level. Now people are like, oh, spiritual, I'm not spiritual, I don't know what to think about that word. And people think, oh, I don't know. But what I like to think about is, spirituality can mean anything it means to you. Like it could mean for some people, connection to religion or faith, and some people it's connection to Mother Nature, for others it's connection to self. And that's what it really was for me. So it's working on the mind, body, soul level, in other words, to open up our whole breathing system and allow us to live a fuller life. So from this, some of the benefits you might notice is, first of all, feeling more energized. You're going to have more energy. If you've got any issues sleeping, it's going to help with that. It's going to improve your sleep patterns. It's going to help you if you have tension in the body and physical restrictions. It's going to help support opening that up. Issues with digestion, it's going to help support your digestive system. You're detoxing as you're doing this breath work, so you're going to be removing waste from your body. So it's going to improve. Well, the list is endless, Alice. I can keep going on, but these are some of the key things. People come to me a lot of the time as well when they're dealing with quite a lot of stress or anxiety, or they're having panic attacks, or they're feeling the overwhelm and they don't know how to deal with things, or they don't know why they need help. They just know that they don't feel like themselves and there's something out of alignment. And it's what, again, I touched on in my experience. I felt like I was very much looking externally for answers, whereas I just needed to bring everything right back in. We can tend to do that because we become very cognitive and very much in our heads trying to find solutions. And actually sometimes we just need to literally pause and breathe, come back into our body and just almost breathe out whatever we're holding on to. So this technique, the way that we practice it, it allows us to connect with our breath, recognize our breathing pattern, start to notice it, and be then able to open it up and release all of this and start thriving in life, I like to say. So it's almost like not being in that survival mode anymore, just switching from survival into thrive mode and really thriving in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a question that came up for me in the middle of that was whether you sort of see certain themes within certain sort of personalities, if that makes sense. So whether it's kind of more of an athlete type person or etc. Are there kind of almost types of breath that you see in different people?
Oh yeah, great question. So actually it is, because in transformational breath, what we do is we observe your breathing pattern and we analyze your breath. It's called a breathing analysis. So we will observe how you're breathing, where the breath is moving in your body, how is it flowing, and what that will allow us to tell you or to see is actually how you're living your life, because it is directly reflected. And the other thing is that our individual breathing patterns are so individual. They're actually as individual as a fingerprint. So they're so unique to us, which I was blown away by when I found out. But the more I, learned about it, it makes sense, because the way we hold things in our body and the way we're breathing. So a facilitator will be able to observe your breath and read that. So there are some particular patterns we might see where if someone's particularly, I guess, overwhelmed or stressed or anxious, they might notice that they're breathing a lot more in the chest and the breath is shorter and faster. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad breathing pattern, but if it remains in that way for a continuous period of time, for an extended period of time, then it can start to have a bit more of a negative impact on the body. There's other people that you might see have other control issues around their breath in certain areas, which will show that they are, very much someone who likes to be in control of situations in life as well. So it's, they want to get everything done now, and if they don't do it, it doesn't get done properly. And it's amazing that once you see someone's breathing pattern and you talk to them about what you see, they're like, how did you know that? Like, it's quite a cool party trick. But it's just showing us that actually, if the way we're living our life is reflected in our breath, then if we can change how we're breathing, can we change how we live our life? And that's what I found so incredible, that actually, if you can control your breath and change how you're breathing, you can actually change how you're living your life. And it is directly related. And I've seen it and I've experienced it myself. So yes, absolutely. So there are different breathing patterns. I guess the most common ones we might see is, like I mentioned, people breathing more in the chest, or people breathing more in the belly. So, the breath is coming down deep into the belly, but maybe not so much movement in the chest. So some people, it's a full breath, but a shallow breath. So we want it to be a bit deeper and fuller. So, like I said, everyone has a different breathing pattern. It's just understanding where you're at, what's going on for you, and being able to then work with your breath to open it up how you need to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because one of the reasons I asked is because myself and one of the other attendees on our seminar, we both have a history in the fitness industry. We're both personal trainers, and we had the same abdominal diaphragmatic sort of breath, but there was a kind of a cutoff from the chest. So there was no kind of rise and fall in the chest. It was all kind of belly. So there was that lack of connection almost between the upper and the lower. So it got me just wondering whether, is that something that you see in a lot of people who have a big kind of fitness background for some reason? Obviously, I'm sure there are other kind of variables that come into it as well, as you say. But that breath analysis is fascinating. That was kind of one of the highlights for me, and learning how that relates, as you say, to maybe some behaviors or areas in our emotional or spiritual lives that seem to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think is incredible, is just going back to what you said about people that are, maybe focused on fitness. Yeah, absolutely, because they're striving to perform to a certain level as well. So there's, other control things that are happening in there, and the way you train with your breath. So I hadn't thought about it in that much detail before, but you are right. Thinking about people that I've worked with, then they tend to have a bit more of a common pattern in that sense. So it's being able to recognize it and opening it up to then get a fuller breath, to then be able to perform at a higher level. And yeah, the breathing analysis, it's unique to transformational breath, actually. We have been taught how to read the breath and where we hold different things in the body. So yeah, super fascinating, as you've experienced.
Yeah, so that was going to be something I just wanted to touch on, sort of, I guess, the hands-on part of transformational breath, because that really blew my mind for the first couple of days, because with the 6-day seminar, and you've mentioned sort of the 3 different sort of modules, I guess, ultimately there's kind of the physical, then there's more the mental and emotional, and you finish more with the spiritual. And what I certainly found was in those first 2 days where we're focusing a little bit more on the physical, because I had put that I had a history of IBS in like my intake forms, a lot of the facilitators were doing kind of proper hands-on work around my abdominal area, just applying some gentle pressure to certain areas that I then obviously were kind of breathing into. And it was really powerful, like some of the stuff that was going on, especially even noises. Like there were these really, really weird noises that were coming up. As kind of just the torso expanded into those areas where they were applying pressure. But it felt liberating ultimately afterwards. And I love the term that resonates with me a lot is expansion, just on like every level ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's happening here is when they're reading your breath, they're seeing where the breath is flowing and where they can open it up. And working on the physical level, what we want to be doing is bringing the breath as deep down into the belly as we can to begin with. So it's going to be, getting that diaphragm. So our diaphragm's our primary breathing muscle, getting that working as effectively as it should be, at its optimum. So it should be fully contracting on the inhale and pushing down on all our vital organs so that the belly is expanding outwards. But for many reasons that may stay tight or locked or not contracting fully, so we're not taking a full breath. So to start to open up on the physical level, we want to start opening up in the lower abdomen and the belly to allow the breath to flow down fully, so the lungs can take in a full breath of air, and then expand in the chest as well before it releases. So it's amazing that you noticed it felt liberating, and the expansion that you talk about, because it is almost like letting go, because we might be holding it all in, which we tend to do, which we'll talk about on the emotional level. But it's, you know, we've got so used to breathing a certain way our whole life that when we start to breathe a different way or start to change that, it's weird. It's like, oh god, I'm not used to breathing this way. It's like I didn't know I could take a full breath. I remember being guided through a session and being told to breathe in longer, take a longer, deeper inhale. And I'm like, I am, but how much deeper can I breathe? And then I realized actually I doubled the length of my inhale, and I didn't even realize how shallow my breath was until someone else had facilitated that with me. And I was like, oh, so, you know, because that's your normal, where you're at, that's normal. And you don't realize until, you know, someone can help you expand that. So that's when I was like, okay, I can see what's going on here. And I immediately felt a difference. So like you talk about the expansion, and that's why it's so incredible to have, you know, that tool to be able to use your hands on your body and release that tension. Because, you know, whilst we're breathing into it, yes, fine, but we're working with muscles and tissues here that are quite tense and tight. So by using our hands to facilitate, it's like an acupressure on the body, it helps to gently release that as we breathe into it and open it up. And then it takes a bit of practice, just a bit of practice, like any kind of muscle that you're strengthening. It's like just practicing to keep it open and allow everything to flow.
And that's why I think the 6-day seminar is just so powerful, because it is that just full-on immersion for 6 whole days that allows for like such a profound shift, because that's certainly what I found. It was like each day just sort of, there was an accumulative kind of letting go ultimately, until for me on the penultimate day where I truly let go, shall we say, and had a huge emotional release. But it took a while, but also on the first 2 days of the physical, even then I was starting to really understand, and I guess have a bit of a slap in the face, so to speak, around how much tension I was holding physically. You know, just again, going back to this idea of feeling a release happening, whether that's kind of muscularly and then moving into kind of the emotional release of maybe trauma or previous stresses, which I guess allows almost literal space for the spiritual side of things to bloom as well at the final part. So the whole seminar is, I think, put together in such a genius way.
Yeah, it really is. And like you've explained it there exactly. So, you know, once we are opening up on a physical level where we begin, it's that muscular, you know, the breathing frame that we're working with. And once we start to open that up a little bit, going into the mental and emotional, that's when we start to get deeper into it. So the stuff that's in our unconscious that we didn't even realize that was there. You know, I've had sessions where I'm crying and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm crying. I don't know what this is related to, but it's just such a beautiful release. And it's almost like allowing yourself to feel the things that you haven't allowed yourself to feel over the years. You know, it could have been stored away because at the time you felt that emotion, it didn't feel safe to feel it. So you locked it away. So once you start to breathe and open that up, if that comes to the surface, it's allowing that to release. And again, that's another level of opening, another level of integration that's happening. And like you said, it almost clears it all out to then allow for that spiritual connection, whatever that looks like to you. You know, and on the spiritual level, I don't know how much you've experienced or heard about people's experiences, but it could range from anything. People have deep relaxation during sessions and just are so refreshed. Other people are off in different dimensions, seeing colors, getting messages, and you know, it can take you as far as, you know, you allow it to, I guess. And whatever that means to you is what it means to you. And it's just allowing yourself to be open. And that's what it is. It's about opening up to yourself and to life, to possibility, and tapping into what's out there and within it even.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I've recommended the seminar to probably 3 clients just this week, because I think it's such a great tool to help us to help us let go, but sometimes just to help us understand a little bit more about what might be contributing to some of our physical ailments. Because there's so often a psycho-emotional, spiritual component, in my experience, to these things. And again, that's not to say that we can't go and have one session and have a mind-blowing experience, but just that idea of going and being immersed for several days just increases the likelihood, I think, that we'll have that profound experience. And once you've had it, there's kind of no looking back, ultimately.
That's it. You're absolutely. And that's so true. I mean, like you said, you can have one session, have a powerful experience, and some people choose to do that. You can continue with sessions. And I always recommend to have at least 3 to 5 sessions anyway, because you're starting to open up. You're learning how the technique is working with the connected breath. And then once you have a session, you might feel a bit of expansion, but then you might return to that normal, the regular pattern if you don't continue with it. Like I say, it's a practice. So to have a seminar where it's 6 days, you have 2 sessions a day, you're not getting away from it. You're doing it every day. And it's almost that consistency that allows you to go a bit deeper, and having that support there and being held and being able to go, okay, I'm going to do this now. But not forcing it even, it just happens. You're just allowing it. All you need to do is focus on your breath and be open, and things will start to shift. And when you talk about, you know, some of the ailments that you might experience, you know, particularly if there's people listening to this that are thinking about, you know, how it can all be connected, then, you know, we're working with our entire body, you know, the whole system here. So when we're working with the physical level and opening up on a muscular and working with our breathing frame, working with the digestive system, when we start to tap into those emotions as well and start to clear that, things that we're, you know, holding on to, we may then start to realize how that's impacted us. So for an example, just touching on how emotions that we feel and can be connected to how we breathe. If you think about any kind of emotional experience that you've had where you might be feeling sad or angry, or, you know, just any kind of emotion that you don't feel like you can express at that time. Maybe you're around people, so you're holding it in, or you're really busy, I don't have time for this right now, and you just carry on. Or, you know, what happens when you get scared and you hold your breath? You hold your breath. Or a classic, you stub your toe and you're like, you tense up your body, you hold your breath because you're like, I don't want to feel that pain, because we don't feel it. So we're controlling it with our breath, and it's stored in our body. So when this is happening over a lifetime, so imagine it can start with my children. Don't cry, don't laugh, don't say that, don't do this. And then in school, and then in our adult life, in our working life, you know, whatever it is, it's a lifetime of holding this stuff in. So our muscles have tensed up, you know, in certain areas. So they're not allowing, you know, an efficient flow of oxygen and blood through the body, through the cells. And, you know, an example is, you know, if your diaphragm is tight and locked, it's not working efficiently like a pump in the body. So when it is contracting and releasing, it's essentially massaging all of our vital organs internally. You know, it's giving the stomach, intestines, kidneys a massage on the way down, and then on the release it's massaging the heart. So we, like, literally, I love the idea of thinking, you know, every time we're breathing, we're massaging all our internal organs. But if that diaphragm is tight and locked, and it's not, so, you know, there's a number of things happening, but one of them is that as well. So we're not allowing, you know, things to be working efficiently in our body. And then that in turn is connected to the lymphatic system, because that action of the diaphragm is stimulating our lymphatic system, getting that, you know, waste removed from our body. It's like detoxing us. And so if the diaphragm is tight and contract, I keep going back to that, because that area, and the solar plexus where the diaphragm is, I guess, is our main control center. So you may think that when you hold your breath or you gasp in, that area gets tight first. So it's almost like that could be the first point that gets quite tight, or in the shoulders or something like that. So we don't realize how much the knock-on effect is of how we're breathing or not breathing to how we feel on our general health and well-being.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can go, I could go on about like all the different parts that it affects and how it's all connected. It's, you know, it continues to amaze me that, you know, how powerful it can be just to be aware of how we're breathing, and changing how we breathe and opening how we breathe can actually start to support our entire system.
Mm.
Not only how we live our lives, but how we feel.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's the perfect example, really, where over generations and generations we've kind of disconnected from, in some ways, ourselves and from a natural way of existing. And I think breathwork for me has almost been as challenging as kind of psychedelics in that sort of integration phase. And I actually suggested after seminar that what would be amazing, I think, sometimes would be to have a post-seminar sort of webinar where we're just checking in with one another, because you can have some of those profound realizations about how you want to live your life and how at the moment maybe there are some mismatches in regards to that, and navigating that can be quite challenging, I think. Whether that's something as big as, oh my god, I need to change career and be a breath worker, or whether it's something a little bit smaller but still a challenge for you to navigate in regards to how you're going to integrate that into life after you've had something like an experience with the seminar, or just a profound one-on-one session. And I think that's just a testament to how powerful breathwork is ultimately.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely, and you're right there, because it's really important to know that you are supported in that process and have access to facilitators, and like you're talking about, the integration, because the integration can still be happening a while after the breathing session and a while after the seminar. I know people that have completely transformed their lives after a seminar, like changed jobs, left relationships, changed careers, made huge life changes. I think for me, I was already on the path of change. So for me, it solidified some of the choices I was making. But yeah, you can, because I think, like we've talked about, it brings you back to self. When you talk about disconnect, we have become disconnected, but disconnected from self, disconnected from, being grounded here on this earth, because I guess we're overstimulated these days, and we're very much in our heads. We're very cognitive in how we think and what we do. And when I talk about being overstimulated, we can be accessed all times of day. A smartphone that's attached to your hand, you can be accessed 24 hours a day. It's no longer that you leave work or something and that's it. And then you've got social media and you've got access to that. So we're always switched on. And are we thinking about what's going on out there and being overstimulated? Whereas we do need to, I guess, come back to self and connect with that. So yeah, it's in the disconnect. I guess I can relate to that as well when I talk about the emotions that I was storing that came out in my seminar. I had disconnected from that as well. So I was very much in my head, and it's when the breath work brought me back into my body that I was able to connect with that and release it. So it sounds true. Even if you haven't had a big trauma as such, we can just become disconnected day to day in how we live our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and as you say, that can just come from busyness, ultimately, running around as we all do day to day. It's having those little moments to pause and to reconnect and to ground ourselves. But another kind of, I guess, another element of transformational breath, I'm not sure if there's anything that you want to touch on here, but, well, two things. One, the toning, and the second one, the stomping.
My favorite part of the session.
Because that alone sometimes it provides such a shift in the session and within the body ultimately. So again, really simple but yet so powerful.
Yeah, it really, really is. So what we're doing here is we're working with vibrations. So when I talk about vibrations, I'm talking about physics here. It's not just hippie stuff. We're talking about vibrations here. But when we are breathing, so the connected breathing practice. So connected breathing is when we don't pause between the inhale and the exhale. So we're connecting the breath and keeping a continuous circle of breath in and out. When we start to breathe in this way, a lot of things are starting to happen in the body, and we're starting to essentially raise our vibration. And when we work with sound and movement, which we do in the session, as you said, sound is also a vibration and movement is also a different vibration. So when we're starting to open up the body and the breath by breathing in this connected way, using our hands to facilitate any physical tension that we see, then sometimes we might get to the point where we're feeling a little bit stuck, particularly when it's coming to an emotion. So say you've stored away an emotion for such a long time that it's coming to the surface, and your immediate response is, I'm going to hold my breath again. I don't want to feel that. I'm just going to hold it in. It's going to stay right there. And then, your facilitator will be encouraging you to keep breathing, breathe through it, because you want to unlearn that pattern. You want to undo that and breathe through it. But if you can use some sound, that's a different vibration that you can feel in your body that's going to help to release that. So by using the sound, we're working with another vibration to help release that from the body. Movement as well, physically shaking it out, physically moving it from our body. It's a really primal thing for us to do as well. Animals will do that if they have anything, high stress or tension in the body, they'll shake it out. Children do it. You see these young children having tantrums, and they're just literally like, something has happened, and they're like this overwhelm of emotion, and they just scream and kick and pound, and then they're fine because the emotion's released from their body. So by using these as tools, it helps supporting us to release what needs to from the body. So it's really incredible that we've got not just the breath that we're working with, connecting the breath to open us up and bring us back into our body, but then the hands-on pressure, the acupressure points that we're observing to open up the breath. And then we use the sound and movement as additional tools to help shift that through and open us up. And I love working with sound and movement anyway, because it's so powerful. I think it's great to work with different sounds and notice the vibrations in the body. And then movement is so powerful anyway for moving and for opening the body and, releasing things that we need to. So you put all of this together in this beautiful little formula, and you've got such a powerful tool that you've then got for life to be able to, call on and, daily practice ideally. But you've got access to this forever.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, it's just, I'm not sure we can have a conversation about all of this without talking about the transformational dance at the beginning as well.
Yeah, so you experience the breath dance. Yeah. So, I mean, this started out to work with the Kundalini energy, and the Kundalini breath is it used to be called. So it's essentially opening up the breath and getting our breath open and activated before we go into a session. So, just for example, if we're breathing now, and someone that's never done any type of breath work before, if you lie down and start breathing in this way and start being poked and prodded and told to do this, it's going to feel maybe a bit strange, and the muscles are probably going to be quite tense, and you're not sure what to expect. So before going into a session, it's quite nice to just always have a warm up before going into the session. So the Kundalini breath and the breath dance now is a beautiful way for us to just move our body and start to open up the breath and get everything warmed up, and just start to open up before we go into the session, because then that can help you just relax a little. So it's just like any kind of warm up before you do exercise. The breath dance at the beginning of a session is to help just to warm the body up, open it up a little bit, and just, okay, I'm ready for this, let's do this. And it's fun, right?
It is fun, yeah.
It might also feel strange as well, especially in a room full of people, and you're like, it feels a bit awkward.
Yeah, it definitely gets less and less weird as the seminar goes on, and by the end everyone's just completely and utterly embracing it.
Right, exactly. I just think it's such a joyous way to move as well and connect. But to begin with, it's like, oh, this is odd. Why are we doing this? And even when you're doing the session and like breathing in the way that we do, because it's an open mouth breath as well, so it's like, oh, this is strange. And then you're making me make these sounds, and now you're telling me to move, and like, what is going on here? So it is I guess something that takes you out of your comfort zone, and it's completely different to what we used to, because in transformational breath, the technique we use is not something that we should be doing every day. We're supposed to breathe through our noses all the time. It's not that we should be breathing through our mouth. But for the purpose of this technique, it's a lot more powerful the way we do it. So, just, it does take you completely out of your comfort zone. Let's just start to stretch you open right from the beginning with the dance, and then, to see what happens from there. Let the magic start to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of is like a bit of an icebreaker, isn't it, really, as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you think would be helpful for our listeners to sort of be aware of, or any sort of big things around transformational breath that we haven't yet touched on?
I think that if you are interested in connecting with yourself and understanding what your own, I guess I like to say, superpower is, it might sound cheesy to some, but it's essentially just connecting with yourself and understanding what's going on with you and your body, then breathwork is a great place to start. So by starting to understand your body and your breath and what's going on, you can start to learn how you can open that up and what that means for you. So transformational breath in particular, it does use these modalities. It can be really powerful. And one thing it does is it's integrative. So when I say integrative, it allows anything that we've stored in the body to come to the surface and clear. So we're allowing that to integrate into the body. It's not just a quick fix, let's just get an energy boost, because of course that's really powerful as well. There are so many breathing exercises and breathing techniques out there that are so powerful in their own right. Even if it's just to manage stress at one time or something, improve digestion for some reason. But transformational breath, it's fully integrative. So it takes you on a complete journey. So like we've talked about on the physical level, then the mental, emotional level, then the spiritual level. And it teaches you that you are the master of your breath. You control that. It's your life. You've got the power. So working with a facilitator, of course, you need to be guided to begin. But you can get to the point that you're able to do shorter sessions by yourself and just really master your own breath and start to take back that power and take back control of your life. And some beautiful things that you'll learn along the way as well. We work with intention quite a lot, set intentions as to what we want, which helps us, focus on what it is that's important for us, and again, connect with self. And that's been the biggest thing for me. It's connecting with self, bringing me back to what is important to me, who I actually am, and be guided to do what I'm passionate about. People talk about wanting to find their purpose, and you don't necessarily have to find your purpose. You have to find yourself, and then your purpose finds you almost. And it's just like bringing you back to that. So it's just bring it all back in. So yeah, I think that it's just, I found it a really powerful tool, and I think that you have too, which is incredible. So I think you could talk about this for hours, Alex. I could keep going on, but it's one of those things you actually have to try it to know what it's like. So I can tell you about all of the different experiences I've had, or my clients have had, and people have had, but until you try it for yourself, it's going to be one of those things that you're always going to be like, well, that sounds like this, it sounds like this, but yeah, it's got to be experienced.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I think I'm not sure I can really add anything to that. I think, as you say, it has to be sort of a felt experience, and that is what's going to help people truly understand the power of the breath ultimately.
And you've got to be ready to do it. So that's the thing. I think that the powerful thing I found with breathwork is that it finds you when you're ready. So I've talked about, going through my trauma, having tried loads of different therapies over the years. And if I'd found breathwork 10 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have connected with it in the same way, because I wasn't ready. So, I'm ready for it when I found it, when breathwork found me, and I was open to give it a go and try it. And that's the other thing I'd say as well, is go into it open without expectation, because that expectation we might have, oh, breathwork is going to fix this, or I want this to happen, that's us being in our heads trying to control it again. So it's just like being open and going, okay, what do I want to get from this? And just being open to see, okay, how can I learn about my breath, and how can that support me? And you'll be amazed, because every single time you have a breathing session, it's completely different. You may realize, it's just completely different every time, because I think our bodies are so intelligent that they give us what we need at that time and how much of it. So it's a process. It's a process. Just go slow, be open, be curious, be playful. Just, give it a go.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a really key point, actually, because I think I look back to my first ever breath session, and I didn't really know anything about breathwork at the time. So there was no expectation around how powerful it might be, or no hope that, I want this to happen to me. It was kind of just going in almost completely blind to it. And I think that actually was quite helpful. But what I will also say, just based on that first experience, what really helped me was doing it in a group setting. And I know other people might find the opposite. So this is very much just a personal experience. But what was significant for me was when the guy next to me started really getting into the breathwork session, and there was almost some chanting starting to go on, that gave me permission to then have my experience, which for me was just complete and utter laughter for a good 10 minutes that kind of morphed into real crying. But for me, it was so powerful to have other people there, because that definitely helped me kind of surrender to it, basically, and kind of really get immersed into what my experience was.
And that's exactly it, surrender. And it's so true. There's a completely different energy to breathing in a room full of people in a group than by yourself or just with a facilitator. So both are really, really powerful. But like you said, it's, what works for you. There is a different energy. It's almost like everyone that's in this room together, it's like a collective intention and that energy and that release. And like you said, hearing someone going through their experience on the mat next to you, it almost like gives you permission to go, I'm going to allow myself to really go into this, sink into this, see what comes. And so it's, absolutely really powerful to have that group, that collective, that intention, that space being shared together in that way. So it's really powerful that you experience that. And to be open, because every session is different. Because my first session was not that powerful in the sense I didn't have, some people have real physical experiences where their bodies can cramp up and, they start to feel tingling all over their bodies, and, really deep, powerful experiences, and others, huge emotional breakthroughs in their first session. Mine was just quite gentle and peaceful, but that didn't mean it wasn't powerful. So it's, again, going in, not expecting to have a big emotional release. I've actually got a friend of mine that says to me, I really want to come and breathe with you because I really want to have a cry. I need to have a cry, so I'm going to come and breathe. And I'm like, I can almost guarantee if you come and have a breathing session, you probably won't cry because, it's not what's needed at that time. So it's almost like, just not thinking about it too much and just allowing yourself to fall back into your body and see what your body is going to show you and where the breath will take you.
And I think it's using some of those other modalities. I've certainly found over the last year of doing pretty regular breath work that I've connected with sort of my emotions a lot more and a lot deeper. And I'll now find that there will be random times where I can just be listening to a piece of music and start to cry. And it's kind of saying, there's lots of other ways that we can tap into and connect with ourselves on a day-to-day basis as well. And I guess part of that process is, I think you mentioned at the very beginning, this idea of just we become more open, I think, and that's more open to being connected to anything and everything and having an emotion or an emotional response potentially to it, if that makes sense.
And knowing that it's safe to feel that emotion at that time. Because sometimes it can be that, when we've had these emotional experiences, it's not to say that, you listen to this song and you felt that emotion. You could have felt that emotion when you listened to it before, but it may not have felt safe to feel that. And so by opening up, you've got that level of safety. I'm allowed to feel this. I can have a cry if I want to, because, how often have people told you, don't cry, or you shouldn't cry, or, for men in particular, man up, big boys don't cry, all of that. So it's just, there's a real acceptance of self and acceptance of who I am and acceptance of my feelings, and honoring those feelings as well, and saying, okay, actually, I'm feeling this right now. I'm allowed to feel this. It's okay. So it is opening up and having permission and being true to you and starting to be your authentic self.
Actually, that kind of really hits home with my my sort of release at the seminar, because I think part of that was a kind of deep felt acknowledgement of it is okay to let it out, in my case. So just have a really, really quite, really deep cry but where the whole body was just shaking because of the intensity of it. But there was sort of behind that this kind of permission just to let go, surrender. It's okay to feel this kind of thing. So yeah, that really resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so true. It's like, I'm going to cry. I am such a crier these days. Honestly, TV adverts, anything, someone says something like, okay, I'm feeling like it, and just letting it go. And it's okay, because it could be, you don't even have to explain it. I was going to say, it could be old things that are coming to the surface. It just could be that you're tapping into that emotions. You don't even need to explain it. It doesn't have to have a reason. This is just tapping back into that feeling. And that's part of being connected to self, like acknowledging those feelings. Because before, if we don't acknowledge those, we keep it pushed down wherever it is, and that's when we start to have the disconnect and just start living in our heads, because we don't want to feel all of that. So when we're coming back into our bodies, it's like really just allowing ourselves to feel all of that. So I'm really pleased that you're experiencing that. And another one is anger. So many people have like negative thoughts about anger. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling angry because I'm a nice person. Why am I angry about this? And it's like, that doesn't matter. Anger is a really valid emotion. It's telling you something here. So I'm not saying you have to express it at someone, but if you're feeling anger, allow yourself to feel that anger and work through it. What's triggering that for you? What is happening in your life that's making that emotion come to the surface? Because that is where the work is. That is where the lesson is. And that's where, you can grow from. So it's just starting to honor every single one of your emotions that you've got and just letting them flow. It's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Jessie, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to be able to speak to you about this. And I think hopefully we can do round 2 at some point in the future, because as you say, there's so much that can be shared.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Thank you so much for having me on. And I could talk about this for hours, Alex. I'm really pleased that you've given me some time today. And thank you so much. I'm excited for anyone that is looking to explore breathwork further. Transformational breath is a great place to start.
Yeah. So what are the best ways, if anyone wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so all the usual social media handles on my website, jessielaute.com. I run regular breathing circles. Everything is still online, so I am still running things online at the moment. And I have some online courses as well that people can reach out and look into. So, yeah, Facebook, Instagram, website, email, the usual. It's all there.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Jessie.
Thanks, Alex.